It's time to rank all the arcane weapons in Shadow of the Erdtree. We've got perfume bottles, fists, forks, flower, stone gavels, and more. Let's go. Let me know your own ranking in the comments down below, and I may go back and re-rank the original arcane weapons against these DLC weapons. Just let me know if you'd be interested in that in the comments as well. We're going to start with C tier, as there's nothing below that, in my opinion, in this category. And we're starting with the Deadly Poison Perfume Bottle. Now, this is one of the perfume bottles. This one does physical damage. It does have native poison buildup, which is quite good. One of the downsides here really is the weapon skill, which is called Deadly Poison Spray, where you put the poison bottle up above your head, you do a little spray, poison powder like trickles around. It is deadly poison and it will poison anything that's close to you. It does also poison yourself, which is kind of the downside to that, right? Like, one of the benefits here is that you can then trigger poison on yourself if then you want to get like all those attack buff benefits from having that effect triggered. But realistically, there's not a ton of benefit to that when just the entire weapon swing is going to be triggering poison anyway without triggering it on yourself, and it triggers it very quickly. Like, that deadly poison buildup just happens very quickly just by having like a high amount of arcane, which you definitely will if you're, say, running a build like this. So it's not a great weapon skill, and you can't change it, which is a bummer as well. And because it is a perfume bottle, you can't do critical hits. It has like no like stance damage and stuff, so it's just sort of like, yeah, you know, it's not great. But the weird thing about the weapon skill as well, I will mention, is that enemies don't notice you. You can like stand behind them and just like poison them with this effect, and then just like stand there and let the poison just like go. It's a little weird. Don't know why that is a weird interaction, but it's a real actual practical benefit to that, but it's just something you can do. But anyway, that's why it lands at the bottom of this list. Next, we have the Blood Fiend's Sacred Spear. Now, this is basically Mohg's Sacred Spear, but like worse in like every single way. So it comes with a weapon skill, Blood Fiend's Blood Boon, which is essentially the same animation as the Blood Boon ritual, except when you shoot it up in the air, it'll have like a explosion effect that'll land on the target you're hitting. It's not an AoE around you. Now, you can use this multiple times, like have follow-up attacks, like trigger it multiple times, same as you can with Blood Boon ritual. Just really the downsides here is that it is only physical damage. Mohg's Sacred Spear is physical and fire. It's a lower, significantly lower amount of damage that you get from Blood Fiend's Blood Boon, which is very odd considering how limited that like explosion area is. And it's also a great spear, just like Mohg's Sacred Spear. Now, in order to even get this spear, you technically have to get Mohg's Sacred Spear in a way, because you have to beat Mohg anyway. So it just doesn't really fit anywhere neatly in terms of like, there's no real reason to use this rather than the Mohg's Sacred Spear, right? Because it's just worse in every single way. Like, its damage is worse, it just with its basic attacks. Its weapon skill has the exact same animation, but it's worse with worse damage, and it doesn't scale as well, right? You don't have the fire damage. You've got a little bit of fire damage from like the Blood Flame on the weapon skill, but it's just not really it. But the Blood Fiend's Fork is actually a little bit better. This is a spear rather than a great spear. Now, this one, you can change the Ashavor on it. It's got that native bloodlust build up as well. Now, it comes with Barbaric Roar, which isn't actually that bad, right? Because like the Roar does increase your attack power, and it does also change your heavy attacks to like use a different animation, which is actually quite good on this spear, because like those heavy attacks become much faster in like a quick like combo ability, so you can build up that bloodlust pretty quickly. So it's actually not bad. And then because you can change this, right, you could put any of the typical like thrusting Ashavors on it. You could put something else on it if you wanted to, which definitely gives it a benefit over the Sacred Spear variant that we just talked about. And then because this is just a spear, right, you can easily put something else in your offhand if you wanted to, you know, have like a shield and then like have this as your main weapon with the bloodlust buildup. Like, you can put an Ashavor on it that you really like. A lot of value there, but it's still not the best in this category. It's still just like an okay weapon in terms of the broader spectrum here, so that's why it's sitting right at the top of the C tier. For B tier, we're going to start off with a weapon that I really wanted to like, and I do kind of like it, and it just kept falling further down this list because there are other better options. That's the Obsidian Lamina. Now, what this is it's a Reaper that does physical damage. It doesn't scale great with arcane. It's mostly a dexterity weapon, but it's got a few unique things to it. One being that it has the blood loss build up on it natively. Also, the main kicker here is the weapon skill, the Dynastic Sickle Play, where you'll essentially do like a back step, like quick step animation where it's essentially a dodge like backwards. Then if you follow up with like a strong attack, you'll do like another like slashing combo. And if you follow up again, you'll like do like a finisher of that and like slam the weapon down. Now, this weapon, like, I want to really like it because it seems really cool, but like the weapon skill itself isn't great, right? Something I should also mention is that it can be buffed with Ansbach's set as well because of like, you know, the dynastic skill that this is. But what you have here, right, is obviously he's got that quick step animation, which is like super cool, but that second follow-up is such a long animation that you'll be punished essentially for any time you use it. So you'll only ever really use like that first button press to get that quick step, and then this first follow-up where you just like attack once. That damage there is pretty solid, but it's like nothing compared to, you know, other weapons that can do so much better damage here. And even two-handing this weapon with like the right buffs and everything, the overall like just attack combo damage here isn't fantastic either, even with the Ansbach set buff, right? There's just like better options in a lot of this regard, and the weapon skill itself could be really strong if those animations were a bit cleaner and there was maybe a way to like animation cancel out of the second half of that long combo, because you very regularly, if you try and trigger this, will just get stuck in that long animation and get punished by especially boss attacks, right? Like, because there's no way to avoid that there. So it's okay, but like there's definitely better options. Like the Putrescent Cleaver. This is a great axe that does physical and magic damage, which is kind of unique for this. Now, this also has native Frostbite build-up, which is one of the main strengths of this weapon. The Spinning Guillotine, the weapon skill, is pretty okay. Like, you do jump up in the air, slam the thing down, and you can continually like spam this to like do the spinny attack as much as you like. And then once you do end it, you'll do like an extra spin damage. And there's plenty of ways that you can like, you know, use certain successive attack buffs here, and obviously like you've got the Frostbite, which is a fantastic status effect to apply to enemies, but there's just some downsides to its overall effectiveness in combat, right? Like the skill is a pretty slow animation. It's overall not great. There's better options in other categories and just like better in the arcane in general, because it does mostly or slightly lean strength as well. If you are making an arcane build, it's probably not the primary weapon that you're going to go for. So it sits sort of in this weird like middle ground where it's pretty okay for like a boss weapon. It's like not great, but I did have some fun with it while testing. Flowerstone Gavel. This is a weird one. I am really in two minds about this, right? So we'll start with some negatives first. It's a hammer. Hammers have pretty terrible, just like basic attack combos. They're not really great. Now, it's also got some pretty okay damage numbers in terms of its like attack rating. It's like nothing really to like, you know, get excited about. It's like pretty average. Now, it does have benefits here, being that it deals extra damage to dragons and ancient dragons. It also has a weapon skill that calls down red lightning and strikes the target. It deals lightning damage, and it temporarily reduces the target's lightning damage negation. So when you use it again, it'll do more damage. It can also be charged to increase the damage here. Now, it does scale off arcane the lightning damage as well, which is beneficial for an arcane build. The thing here though is, in a vacuum, if you're just using this weapon, it's not like amazing, right? Like the weapon skill is great for like a little bit of range plus like the lightning damage negation. So in a vacuum, if you don't think about anything else you're using here, like if we're ranking weapons, we're not ranking builds per se, it's not necessarily the best in that category. But there's a lot of fun things that you can do with this, right? Because of that lightning damage negation, especially you can combo it with like certain incantations that are lightning based, or even different weapons, right? Like you could start a fight off, get this ranged weapon skill off, and then switch to some other lightning weapons while they've got that lightning damage negation on them, so you're doing more damage in that way. Like obviously the dragon effect as well, right? You'll just shred through dragons with this, so plenty of value there. But like in terms of just like in a vacuum, as mentioned, as its own weapon, not thinking about anything else, it sort of sits here in that like high B tier potentially. Like if you could totally talk me into A tier for it, for absolutely sure, but that's where I've decided to land with it. The Pole Blade of the Bud is next. This is a halberd that does physical damage. It has really good arcane scaling, and it has native Scarlet Rot build-up, which is probably the primary reason you would use this weapon. Romana's Purification is the weapon skill here, and this is the major disappointment. Now, it will bring you up in the air, and then you'll like slash down, and then you'll do another slash and like a little explosion. This does deal a decent amount of Scarlet Rot build-up. The issue with this is it's very easy to miss enemies. It's also very easy to get knocked out of it because you have 0 hyper armor while this effect is going off. So you'll like jump up in the air in this slow animation, and then you just get like knocked down, and it's like, well, you know, I guess that's over. And you can miss small enemies because you like go over their heads. Like it's a good weapon. I really want to like it. It's got some fantastic, like, just general attack combos, because they're just like those slashing combos that you can get on certain halberds here, like the Loretta's War Sickle. Like, they're similar combos to that. So lots of benefits to this weapon, but it's just the weapon skill that really lets it down. Totally, if you're making some sort of a Scarlet Rot build, then you can definitely make something with this weapon. It just like has those limited aspects to it that bring it down a few pegs, which is why it's sitting at the top of the B tier for me. Moving on to A tier here, we've got the Poisoned Hand, which is a fist weapon that I really actually liked. This has native poison build-up. Now, what's unique about this as well is that it raises your attack power when poisoning is in the vicinity, and this is on the weapon itself, right? This isn't, you know, a talisman or whatever, which obviously there are those talismans for this as well, but this is just by having this weapon. And the same thing applies if you just have this weapon like in your offhand and you've got something else in your main hand and you're not actually using it. You can still get that benefit, by the way. But the real kicker here is just having that benefit to increase your overall damage, which is fantastic. And you've obviously got all the other synergistic things you can use with the Mushroom Crown and all those talismans and everything. Now, because it's a fist weapon as well, you've got those really fast attack combos, so you can quickly build up poison. It is also deadly poison as well, so it does slightly more damage. And then you've got the weapon skill here, the Poison Spear Hand Strike, where you essentially like stab your fist forward and deal a ton of deadly poison build up to the target, as well as a solid amount of damage. Pretty much on most enemies except bosses, that will just instantly trigger deadly poison on them. So you really just need to use that once and then just like dodge their attacks, throw some punches, throw hands, do all that nonsense, and then the target will just eventually like wither away and die. So plenty of value here. I did really like the damage, especially on some of the charged heavy attacks that you can get off with fist weapons. They're all still fantastic as they are with fist weapons here. So plenty of value in the Poisoned Hand if you wanted to make a poison-based build with this weapon. Ancient Meteoric Greatsword is next. Now, this is quite a unique weapon in that it does physical and magic damage. It's also a colossal sword. It has arcane scaling, no intelligence scaling here, and then it has the White Light Charge Ash of War on it. Now, what's fantastic about this as well is that like you do zoom yourself forward, so you gap close really well, but the damage on that like initial input explosion is fantastic when that actually goes off. And because this is a colossal sword as well, you've got benefits from, you know, all of those like big weapon things like your two-handed talismans, etc., that like are really beneficial just for the basic attack combos. It's one of my favorite weapons just from the DLC. I just really like that gap closing effect and then the explosion, especially when you hit multiple enemies with it. Plenty of value, plus it like staggers enemies very quickly to then you can follow up, you know, do your critical hits and all that good stuff. Just a solid weapon overall that definitely can fit with any like large weapon builds that is a little bit unique than, you know, the typical just grabbing the, you know, the giant crusher and just being able to smack enemies with that. Gives you a bit more different options here while having that arcane scaling if you wanted to, you know, make one of those style of builds but have an arcane build rather than strength, as most of those builds are typically strength. It just gives you that sort of alternative there, and fantastic weapon overall. Moving on to the S tier, and our final weapon on this list is the Blood Fiend's Arm. If you know anything about the DLC, you probably knew this was going to be at the top of the list. Now, this has been toned down, right? The arcane scaling on this weapon has been reduced, as well as the status build up on the heavy attack like has been reduced like natively. You can still get a ton of build up with this weapon, right? It does have that native arcane scaling, but you're absolutely going to change the Endure weapon skill into something else, literally anything. Like in this footage here, I'm using Cragblade, but you can essentially use anything you like here and put that blood effect on it to get the blood loss build up on it, or any other status effect you like. But the blood loss build up here is still absolutely fantastic when you do have that heavy attack, that unique heavy attack where it slams down. There's that little like blood flame explosion. It does also have a little bit of fire damage here as well. Like it is blood flame, it's not just blood, but it's still really solid damage that you can get this effect off with. And you don't need to have a weapon skill here, right? Like you're not using any FP to get this incredible effect off. That is essentially just like a free weapon skill, considering the fact that it's unique to this weapon. It has fantastic blood loss build up on itself, not accounting for the fact that you might be adding blood loss to the weapon as well. It's a colossal weapon, so fantastic poise damage, very easily can stagger enemies, follow up with critical hits, solid amount of physical damage overall because of the weapon type that it is, regardless of what scaling you change it into. Just a fantastic weapon overall, even though it has been toned down a little bit. Probably will get toned down again, no doubt, but it's still a fantastic weapon and sits at the top of this list. But let me know your thoughts on this list in the comments down below. What are your top 5 weapons in the arcane category from the DLC? Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.